Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Mills. Today I am doing a true crime type video, which I haven't done in a little bit, so I am excited. If you know me, you know that I love to do these videos. And before I begin, I just wanted to show you guys my new bracelet. Here it is. Not my Apple Watch, this guy. So this was sent to me by Sashka Co., which is a bracelet company. As you may have guessed, it comes in this really cute little pouch. And on the back of this card, it says, this bracelet was hand crocheted bead by a skilled artisan in the Kathmandu Valley of Nepal. Your purchase empowers women to rise above poverty through fair trade. So I love this company because they are supporting people in a much lower socioeconomic class, and they're kind of not just giving them money, but teaching them a skill and then supporting that skill. And they have so many different options of bracelets. They have breast cancer awareness bracelets. They have every color. They have kids bracelets. They're 100% guaranteed for life. So if it breaks, you can always email the company. They'll send you a replacement. I do have a link if you want to get one for yourself, get one for someone that you love. Just go to the description and copy my link and you can shop there. As I said, today the video is a true crime video, and I did a little poll yesterday on my story or my community page for YouTube. I don't know what it's called. And it seemed like, the poll results were most people wanted a crime case from the Dominican Republic. I asked United States, DR, or some other country, and the large majority was for the Dominican Republic. So I have chosen a crime case in the Dominican Republic for you. And as always, I mean no disrespect to anyone that I'm talking about. I'm just relaying information that I have found and compiled all together for you. So this is a case that is very popular. If you're Dominican or if you're savvy on Dominican news and whatnot, you might remember this case. It's pretty old, but once I start describing it, you might be familiar with it. If not, then definitely watch until the end, because this is a very important case in Dominican history and nearly everyone in the country knows about it, much like Emily Peguero's case. This is referred to as El Caso Llenas, and it happened all the way back in 1996. It has to do with a young boy whose name was José Rafaél Llenas Aybar. He was a 12-year-old boy in 1996 living in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. So Jose, the 12-year-old boy, was part of an upper middle class family. They were very comfortable financially, and they had ties to important people in the country. For example, a lot of different media moguls. I think someone in the family, they were related to the vice president at the time. So they were upper middle class. They were definitely a well-known family, and they were living in a nice part of Santo Domingo. So this whole family, they were very close-knit. Jose was very close with his mother, and she mentioned that they were pretty strict with him. They didn't let him go roaming the streets by himself or anything. They pretty much always knew where he was and always wanted to know who he was with and where he was going and whatnot. Basically, this whole story starts on Friday, May 3rd, 1996. On Friday, May 3rd, 1996, Jose called his mother, Ileana, who was not home. Jose was home, and he asked if he could go to the supermarket with his cousin. His cousin lived directly in front of them in another house, so it wasn't a far trip or anything. He wanted to go with his cousin, who was a 19-year-old named Mario José Redondo Llenas. They were cousins through Jose's father, so his brother's son, and they were very close. Their families were close. Mario was close with the Llenas family, and the mother had no problem with Jose going out with Mario. He was older, but like I said, that's his family, that's his cousin, his first cousin, and they weren't strangers or anything, always together. So she said that's fine. Jose had told her on the phone that there was an engine exhibit at the supermarket, like motors, car engine, whatnot, and he really likes that kind of stuff. So that's why he really wanted to go. And he said that Mario, his older cousin, had offered to bring him. So his mom said yes. They go, say to Jose that he needed to be back home at 5 p.m. because they had somewhere to go. So she said, yeah, you can go, just be home by 5. So an hour later, she gets a phone call from the cousin Mario saying that Jose asked him to drop him off at the bowling alley, Plaza Bolera, with some friends, and that his mother could pick Jose up at the bowling alley. She did say on the phone, okay, I'll get him from there, but she later said that right away she felt something was kind of off, because she says that Jose never went anywhere by himself. He was either with his mom, with his dad, with a family member, or like they personally left him somewhere with friends, but that it would be kind of weird for him to say like, oh, just leave me at the plaza. Like, that's not something that he would have done, and he's 12. So she went right away with kind of a nervous feeling to Plaza Bolera, and she said that he was not there. And then she went to the supermarket thinking, you know, maybe they went back to the supermarket or whatever, and Jose wasn't there, Mario wasn't there, and there was no engine show either. So there was no like exhibition going on at the supermarket either, which is where he wanted to go in the first place. Obviously at this point she was freaking out, and she said even more so, Jose wasn't a child who lied. So it wouldn't be like him to say, drop me off at the bowling alley to his cousin and then not actually be there and go somewhere else. Like, that just wasn't like him. She immediately calls her cousin, Guillermo Moncada, I believe, and unfortunately he was killed just a few years ago. He got in a fight with his sister's neighbor over a parking spot or something, and he got killed. But right away they kind of jumped into action and started a search for Jose, looking all over the neighborhood, all of these stores, all of the plazas. Pretty much right away, Mario, the cousin, found out that Jose was missing. He joins the search, helping his parents and family and friends and the neighbors look for Jose. He was crying. He was really worried with everyone else who were freaking out. So this search was pretty much from Friday evening all the way to Saturday. Unfortunately, on Saturday, that's May 4th, 1996, they found the body of Jose in a small creek about 24 kilometers northwest from the city center in Santo Domingo, like off of the Duarte Highway it's called Arroyo Lebron. It's like a little creek, like I said, near a farm, like off of a farm property. And he was in the water, kind of like floating in the water. His hands were bound and his feet were bound with duct tape, and he was stabbed to death. So obviously that was a tragic end to the family's search, and right away they knew obviously that something terrible had happened. Someone had done that to him. So that pretty much started the investigation of who murdered him. And if you're familiar with Dominican culture, if someone passes away, they pretty much have the funeral right away, within like the 24 hours that follows. So they held a funeral for him, and then they focused on the investigation. Unfortunately, they found Jose had been stabbed 34 times. All over his body, obviously very aggressively, and just, it was like overkill, as they say. It just immediately was odd because, like I said, it's a 12-year-old boy from an upper middle class family who seemed to be involved in like nothing sketchy or anything like that. The boy himself was obviously not involved in anything, so immediately they had no idea what was going on or why someone would do that to their son. They investigated the crime scene, and as I talked about in a couple of the other cases, there is not always like 100% in any case, but especially there of the best practices when securing like a crime scene and whatnot. If you've even gotten in like a car accident or seen a car accident there, you know that 100 people are going to show up within 5 minutes and like crowd everything. So there is a certain level of like contamination. I'll just talk about a few of like the inconsistencies and confusing things that they found at the crime scene that made their investigation a little bit more unclear. So they didn't control the crime scene, secure it for kind of like hours. So dozens of people had been walking through that crime scene at that point, and they didn't know like everyone who had been on the crime scene. Many were police officials, of course, but many were just random people too, and they never were like identified or named, and they didn't know if they were just curious about the crime and what had happened and wanted to see more, or if they had kind of bad intentions to contaminate the scene more or hide evidence or something like that. So that late securing of the scene definitely hindered the investigation a little bit. Also, since they had the funeral so soon after they found Jose, unfortunately they did the biopsy after the funeral, and usually it's the opposite, and because of that they lost very significant evidence in that time. As you know, like during the funeral they're doing other things to the body, so during the autopsy they're missing some of that evidence. For example, they were a little bit unclear on the number of weapons used and the number of people who may have committed this crime, because the body had already been, I don't want to say tampered with, but attended to for the funeral. Another thing that was difficult about the investigation was they never recovered the murder weapon at all. And during the investigation, the clothes that Jose was wearing were lost. I think this happened in one of the other cases that I was talking about. It was in police custody, all of his clothing, and then it was lost, and obviously they couldn't do any forensic testing because they were gone, and that probably would have brought up more useful evidence. What they did find at the crime scene was a small piece of paper with a phone number written on it. They call the phone number and they get this girl Kimberly on the phone, and they're asking her like, who are you, because they think that she's somehow connected, and they get her to kind of say that she was dating a man named Juan Manuel Moliné Rodriguez. He was a friend of Mario Llenas, who is the cousin of Jose, who took him to this engine show. It wasn't actually a thing. Right away, the police had Juan Manuel and Mario because that connection was pretty easy. Basically, all that happened between Jose leaving in his house and his body being discovered is what Mario and Juan Manuel told the police officers during interrogation. So obviously we don't know 100% what happened, because I'm sure they're lying about something, but this is what they said happened, like a combination of their stories together. Mario said that Jose did ask him to take him to the bowling alley, Plaza Bolera, and he said that he like kind of went to do that, and then instead he took him to like his accomplice's house, which is Juan Manuel. In all the stories, you'll see them refer to either last names like Moliné Rodriguez, but I think it's just easier to do first names for this, hopefully. So he took Jose to Juan Manuel's house, who was also 19, and Mario's friend. And apparently from there, they just went into Juan Manuel's car and drove around without like a destination in mind. I don't know why, but apparently they were just driving around. While they're driving around, Jose starts getting nervous and agitated and upset, obviously, because again, I said he's not the type of boy that just like rides around with his friends and is like out roaming the streets and hanging out. Like, he knew that he had to be home, and he knew that he wasn't supposed to be doing what he was doing, and like they weren't telling him where they were going. So they decided to pull over, and that's when they bound his hands and feet with duct tape. Not only that, but they decided to put him in the trunk of their Honda car and keep driving. They're still driving around with seemingly no destination in mind. From what I've gathered, they're driving, I believe, away from the city, and all of a sudden they start having problems with the car's brakes. Sorry guys, I had to move inside because it's getting dark outside. Sorry, the lighting's not like ideal in here. So the car's brakes are acting up. They both start to get nervous, and they pull over right near the little creek, Lebron, and they're kind of like discussing, and Mario says, I can't bring Jose back home now because even though he promised and like swore he wouldn't say anything, I don't know if he will. Like, I think that he'll still tell his parents what we did. So, and that we were like kidnapping him basically. So we have to take care of it here. Mario asked Juan Manuel, will you kill him? And Juan Manuel was kind of like hesitant, and he was like doubting in that moment. So during this kind of back and forth, that's when Mario stopped and called Ileana, Jose's mom, and said, I dropped him off at the bowling alley. I don't know why in this moment he decided to do that, but he wanted to like deter her, sent her to like pick him up at the bowling alley. And according to Juan Manuel, Mario was like, all right, you're gonna watch me do this, and told Juan Manuel to stand next to him. He opened the trunk and then looked at Jose like he was an animal, according to Juan Manuel, and just started like stabbing him everywhere, like extremely aggressively, without any pattern and really without any like contemplation at all. He just like opened the trunk and like started stabbing him. Stabbed him mostly in the back, like the majority, and then he cut him right in the back of the neck, and then like sliced his jugular, like his throat. And Juan Manuel said like, Jose wasn't saying anything. Like, obviously he couldn't say anything. Like, he was being stabbed 34 times. So yeah. Then they pretty much were right there at the creek. He was already bound up with his hands and feet. So they just like threw him in the little creek there in Lebron and went back to where they live. And that's kind of, at that point, that's when his mom was, remember, she went to the bowling alley, she didn't see him, she's getting nervous. He joined in on the search and was like acting very like concerned, like, oh, I'll help you look for him. I have no idea. This is where I left him. They both, Juan Manuel and Mario, attended Jose's funeral as well. And apparently, based on like what the family said and other witnesses or other people that were there, they just like sat there and looked like they didn't have any like remorse or anything like that on their faces. So that's sick. Apparently, according to the investigation, what they told police, they thought that they like completely got away with it, but they found that little piece of paper, remember, that pretty much led them directly, immediately back to Juan Manuel and Mario, because it had Juan Manuel's girlfriend's number on it. What the police kind of figured out based on the crime scene was that it looked like Jose found that piece of paper in the trunk when he was put in there, when he was starting to get nervous, and like held onto it in his hand, and it was still in his hand when Mario was stabbing him. And then it like was out of the car when they threw his body into the river. It went with him, and it was found like right next to his body. So that actually ended up leading them very quickly back to his murderers. So a lot of this testimony or kind of like confession is coming from Juan Manuel. What Mario did tell the police is that he had intended to kidnap Jose to hold him for ransom, which doesn't make sense because they never did that. Like, they said that they were going to request 10 million pesos, which is about $625,000, to return him safely. You guys know what a ransom is, I'm sure. But they never did that. Like, they never even made a phone call or like wrote a letter or did anything to like show that they did intend to hold him for ransom and this was a kidnapping. So that really like threw everyone off. Like, if you're gonna kidnap someone and for money, like, you have to demand the money at some point, right? Was that Mario was saying that there were all of these taped videos of his interrogation. Before, I was talking about inconsistencies with the case, and I wanted to talk about a few others of those. I wanted to pretty much tell you who did this crime first. Another inconsistency that was found in the investigation, and the police officers were saying, no, that doesn't exist. But during the trial, there was some evidence of the interrogation, also including like a testimony from Jose's mother, which means that they did videotape at least some of the interrogations or testimonies. So what was in that audio or the transcripts or the videos, no one will ever know, because they're not found, and then the police say that they don't even exist. So that's another thing that's weird about the case. And if you guys are ready, it gets even weirder with what Mario starts claiming, all right? So stay with me here. So Mario, during his investigation and his statements and whatnot, says that the Argentinian ambassador and his family are involved in this murder as well. It says that Luis Palmas de la Calzada is involved, as well as his son, Martin Palmas Messia, I believe. Martin went to school with Mario, and they were around the same age. Remember, Mario was 19. What Mario said is that Luis Palmas, the father, told Mario that he had to murder Jose because if he didn't, he, the father, Luis, would murder Mario's little sister. So the police are like, where did that come from, right? Like, what are you talking about? Mario then says that over the last 4 months, the Palmas family has been abusing him. So he's like a friend of the family because he went to school with the son. He said that he was submitted to traumatic events like witnessing drug deals in front of him at their house, that he had been a witness to a murder on one of their properties, and that he was sexually assaulted by Luis, the father, and that was videotaped. So obviously right away, the ambassador's family is like, no, like 100% denying any of these allegations, from no, we weren't involved in Jose's murder, to obviously none of these things that Mario is saying happened over the last 4 months is true. But a couple weird things that the police found sheds a little bit of doubt on that. One of the things that is sketchy is that Jose's body was found right near one of the Palmas properties. So they own a bunch of, I don't know if a bunch, but they own several properties. They're a wealthy family, and Jose's body was found right near one of them. And this property was like a dog breeding facility. Furthermore, they said that the Palmas family, their entire attitude was just off after being kind of brought into this murder investigation, that they did not react in a normal way. And instead of just saying their innocence and whatnot, they immediately enacted their diplomatic immunity and denied any search of any of their properties, their house, any kind of interrogation of themselves, which is a little bit odd when thinking like, if you have nothing to do with it, wouldn't you just give a statement? I don't know. Something else that casts some doubt. Then in August, completely left the country, like left all of their possessions, left their properties, left all their stuff, left the country to go back to Argentina. A lot of people, including the police, thought this was weird because they're leaving career opportunities, a ton of their possessions, family and friends, based on like some random allegation of an 18-year-old. Another really weird thing is that the vehicle used in this murder was taken into custody, repaired, and then just 3 days later given to the police force to use. So it was never examined forensically, like they never took any evidence from the car, which is insane to me. And then to like just put it on the police service, like definitely not how that should go. In the Dominican criminal justice system, they do have a phase called instrucción. That's where a court-appointed magistrate does kind of like their own investigation and brings up their own evidence and idea. During this investigation, the magistrate Alexis Henriquez, and supposedly the magistrate obtained evidence that directly tied the Palmas family to this murder. This included video footage, apparently, and linked them to other criminal activities too. There were so many leaks to the press of really important information that the police never really got the upper hand. So anyone that was a potential suspect or was involved had the opportunity to completely cover their tracks before the police could get to them. So that was another thing that kind of went wrong in the case. People speculated like a sexual motive to the case, but then there was no evidence presented of that either. But remember, the clothes were lost and then the body had already gone through the funeral process, so the autopsy was not as great as it should have been. One of the biggest questions in the case is, why was Mario, who was such a trusted member of the Llenas family, like what made him go from a trusted member of the family for 18 years of his life to then murdering his cousin with seemingly no reason. Mario was claiming is he was under extreme duress from the Palmas family, and he and Juan Manuel went through various psychiatric testing, and the results show that they could both have some type of personality disorder. But to be expected, apparently the tests were not conducted how they should be in the proper manner, and thus the results are not as trustworthy as they should be. Like I said, the Argentinian ambassador, the Argentinian family fled back to Argentina, and the Argentinian ambassador, Teresa Messia, the mother, who she was the ambassador, not the husband, they fled back to Argentina, but the president at the time actually pulled their immunity, and they were summoned back to the DR multiple times for statements and investigations and whatnot, but they literally never came back. Mario also said in his testimony, as well as other proof and evidence and whatever, that they found that the Palmas family was involved in weapon and drug trafficking, other crimes, and even satanic rituals, which is another kind of weird turn that this case takes. Because of the Palmas family's extremely high status, and the fact that they could and did just flee to Argentina, they escaped without any repercussion. They weren't sentenced. They really got away with nothing. We don't even know if they were linked, but their other crimes and stuff, they didn't have any repercussion to that. The trial for Mario and Jose Manuel, that ended in January 1997, and both of them were sentenced to a maximum of 30 years in prison. In the Dominican Republic, the maximum is 30 years. Like, there's no life sentence. They were both charged a $300,000 fine in damages to Jose's family. Now, in 1999, Jose Manuel had an appeal, and his sentence was reduced to 20 years because they found that he was more of the accomplice than the one that enacted the murder. They said that Mario was the one who did the stabbing, all 34 by himself. A member of the Llenas family related to Jose said she went actually on a television show at the time and was talking about the murder and some of the claims. And she said that the Palmas family was connected to satanic rituals and had connections to black magic and a man named El Brujo, like a witch. That kind of, like I said, never went anywhere because the Palmas family fled to Argentina. But the medical examiner did say that some of the stab wounds on Jose's back did look to be possibly connected to some kind of like satanic ritual or something like that, which is terrifying. But again, that's never been proven or 100% disproven. An investigation by a Dominican journalist, Erwin Cott, found that Luis Palmas, the father, was part of shady stuff. He was part of like an ultra-right Argentine alliance during the Dirty War, and this organization was basically tied to a ton of criminal activity and deaths and disappearances in the 1970s in Argentina. So it obviously brings in the question as to whether this family was related to Jose's murder. On one hand, I think that probably the family does have a criminal history and was doing criminal activity in the DR, and maybe like associated with bad people and doing bad things, but I'm not sure that they had anything to do with Jose's murder. So Juan Manuel has been released from prison in 2017 because he finished his 20-year sentence. Mario has appealed 2 or 3 times. The community was like super pissed the first time he appealed, and obviously he got denied. Nobody really wants him like roaming the streets, and the family obviously does not want him out either. He is set to be released, I believe, 2027, so not too far off. Leana, Jose's mother, came forward and said that she never believed that the Palmas family was involved in this murder at all. She thinks that it was just Mario and just Juan Manuel, his friend slash accomplice, the whole time. She doesn't think that the family has anything to do with it, and that he just kind of made up this connection to try to make it look like he was forced to murder Jose, and take the blame off of himself. What she does think is that Mario was involved in criminal activity with the Palmas family, and that there were like non-moral activities happening at that time, but she doesn't think that they actually had a hand or a part in Jose's murder. She said that she has also lost all contact with Mario's family, which is obviously very sad because that's her husband, like Jose's dad's brother and his family. So they're very close in relation, but they haven't talked since this happened. And she said that at this point, when she was saying this, it had been 15 years since Mario was in jail. And she said that he had never reached out, he had never apologized, he didn't seem remorseful at all for doing this. 2 years later, when Mario had 17 years in prison, he did release a statement to the public, not like directed to the family in particular. He said, "I feel it and I deeply regret it and will for the rest of my life." During his time in prison, he's gotten like certificates and his diploma and whatnot, so he's trying to use that towards his appeal, while the family is saying he has like irreversible antisocial personality disorder and he should not be allowed back into society. He's in the prison in San Cristobal. Like I said, this case just shocked the country. Maybe one of the first cases that got so much national attention. It was actually one of the first televised trials or court cases in the nation. So, and it had like so many viewers. So everyone in the country was really following this case. They were super involved. They were outraged. I've heard about this case before, and it's, 20 years later. And it's sad that nothing was ever like 100% determined, like, was the Palmas family involved? And if they were, like, they really got away with no repercussion at all. And like, why did Mario kill Jose? That's just like the big question, and everyone's question. I mean, he was his cousin. Nothing switched and nothing seemed to like change to make him like spiteful or want to kill Jose. It seems like a panic thing, and he did the crime in such a violent way to stab someone 34 times, a child. I'm very like happy that Juan Manuel and Mario did get sentenced to 20 years and 30 years, and that they were held accountable. So obviously he was young when this happened, and so was Juan Manuel, but it's just like a completely senseless murder, and it really rocked the nation. A child from an upper middle class family, this didn't really happen at all. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this case. Comment below, do you think the Palmas family is involved at all? You can do a little bit of your own research and tell me what you think. Was Mario just bringing them into this story to save himself or try to save himself? Were they involved? Maybe they were involved in other stuff, but not the murder. What do you guys think? Do you think justice was served? Do you think more needs to be done? Just let me know your thoughts about this case. And if you have any other cases that you want me to cover, please just comment the case below. You can even just write the name of it. Any of your thoughts, I would love to hear them below. And I will have the next one for you next week. And I thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you made it to the end.